I'm Teresa Coenen with Stitch & Tree, and today I'm going to give you a few tips on choosing your fabric for Square Dance Delight. You can easily construct Square Dance Delight from panels, border print, or large-scale print. I have examples behind me of each. I have two different large-scale prints here that can be used. I'll show you what I mean when I say have 4 repeats of a large-scale print. I have 2 different border prints here that I can show you. And again, you need 4 repeats of a border print. And I have 2 different panels here. With the 2 panels, you just need 4 panels. It doesn't matter if it's a 24-inch wide panel or a 36-inch wide panel. You just need 4 panels. The key to Square Dance Delight is you always need 4. We're going to be making 4 patch blocks, and so you'll need 4 of each fabric. Let's dig in and take a look at first the large scale prints, and to determine what is a repeat, I'll show you that on the 2 examples I have here. In a large scale print, like this K facet that I show here, you take a point of interest near the edge of the cut of the fabric, and so in this case I'm going to use this leaf of the flower. That leaf repeats itself here in exactly 16 inches. To double check my measurement, I'll find another point of interest on the fabric and measure that. And I'll take where this plant comes into the flower, and I can see that it repeats exactly right here. And my repeat again is at about 15.5 inches. So this fabric has a 15.5 inch repeat, which means that I'm going to need 4 of those. So I'll need a total of 62 inches of the fabric in order for me to make the quilt using the 15.5 inch repeat. I always have the option, if I want, to do a double repeat, which in the case of this stem coming into the fabric, it would repeat all the way to here, which would be 31 inches. That makes it a 1 yard repeat. That's a lot of blocks that I'm going to get out of this quilt. So it all depends on how many blocks you want to get. At the 15.5 inch repeat, I'm probably going to get somewhere between 14 and 16 blocks. And since there's a variety of setting patterns, I'll find a setting pattern that can work with any number of blocks. Again, I'm using a large scale print. This happens to be a batik, and I can use any one of the focal points along this edge that's cut. I'm going to take this swirl coming out of this larger swirl, the swirl that curls around this way. The next time that this swirl is repeated is right here. So you can see I've got from this swirl to this swirl, and that's the repeat. If I measure that repeat, it measures 19.5 inches. So I'm going to need 4 pieces of fabric that are 19.5 inches. So in this case, I'm going to need 80 inches of this large scale print. I'm going to provide one more example of a large scale print before I move on to border print. This example is another K facet design. Has a large scale print, fish all over it. Really hard to tell where my repeats are unless I'm really focusing. Again, I look straight across down the line of fabric. I'm not looking at this fish to see if he's repeated somewhere else on the print. So here's my fish with his mouth. Right off to his back side is a diagonal fish, and I can see that he is repeated right here. Fish, diagonal fish. So if I measure from the mouth of the fish to the mouth of the fish, repeat is at 15.5 inches. So this is another fabric where I would need to have 4 repeats of 15.5 inches. So that's going to be another 62 inches of fabric. I always say 3 yards is a safe bet, but 62 inches of fabric will make this quilt. Let's take a look at border prints. Border prints sometimes have a repeat in the border from top to bottom that matches up and aligns, and sometimes they don't align. This particular border print, Surf's Up by Henry Glass, has a repeat that repeats in every single row. This blue house repeats above it and above it again. But again, I'm measuring the repeats from left to right across the fabric. So starting with that edge of the fabric, I've got a blue house with a red door. And I look for the next blue house with a red door. followed by a yellow house with a blue door. And you'll see that my repeat is actually very short. Blue house with a red door, yellow house with a blue door, another blue house with a red door, yellow house with a blue door, and another blue house. That repeat is very short. Yet when I look at it in comparison, I notice that this row of palm trees is distinctly different than this row of palm trees. Can you see that? Here we have a single palm. Along the same line of fabric, we have a single with a second palm next to it. So that repeat is not as short as I thought. Blue door with a red window. Above it, 2 palm trees. Blue door with a red window. Above it, 1 palm tree. Blue door with a red window. Above it, 2 palm trees. So here is my repeat. The repeat, measuring from window to window, is about 12.5 inches. Now, 12.5 inches is probably not going to get me a lot of blocks, maybe 10 to 12 blocks that I can use in my quilt. And if I want a small quilt with setting squares, that'll be fine. But in this particular case, I went double that. So I have a 24-inch repeat, and that way then I'll get more blocks out of my quilt. Taking a look at this Cozy Critters border print, the Christmas trees all line up with each other in the alternating borders. But what differs is the animal scenes. We start out with a porcupine here. We have below the porcupine, a polar bear. Above the porcupine, another polar bear. So every other row of animals ends up repeating. Again, I have to measure the repeats from animal to animal. So from porcupine, or in this case, this is the edge of the scarf of a fox. From the edge of a scarf of a fox, I measure all the way across to the next edge of a scarf of a fox. In this case, my repeat is 23.5 inches. And so again, I'm going to need 2 2/3 yards of fabric in order to complete this quilt. Panels are much easier to determine for repeats. You just need 4 panels. Using the example that I have behind me, Drivers of the Wild, the panel itself measures 34.5 inches. So I'll just need 4 of those panels. Now in a panel, sometimes there's areas that we don't use in the blocks, and that'll be your determination. You can see that this particular panel has a lot of solid black in the background. I'll still make blocks from that solid black. If ultimately they end up just making a 4-patch of a solid black block, I may choose not to include that in my quilt. This is a quilt that unfolds itself. As you complete your blocks, it tells you what it wants to be. It tells you what setting that it needs to have, and it tells you how it will be displayed most beautifully. If you have any more questions regarding 4 repeats of the fabric that you've chosen, you can email me or send a picture to me via email or on our Facebook page. Thanks so much and enjoy Square Dance Delight.